December. Brattleboro Selectboard is next here on BCTV. Among the items for discussion tonight, consideration of a first-class liquor license for Inspiration Inns doing business as the 40 Putney Road Bed and Breakfast. Further consideration of a hazard mitigation grant dealing with number H05 Western Avenue. Discussion of assigning the number of members per district in Brattleboro with the brand new reapportionment. We see that Town Clerk Annette Cappy is on hand to assist with that issue. Members of the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act Advisory Committee, will be addressing the board on their progress. Discussion of a proposed 2013 representative town meeting warrant article on Brattleboro climate protection. Also discussion of a request for a proposal for a solar energy project with the members of the Brattleboro Town Energy Committee. An update on curbside composting is scheduled, and a proposal to authorize a partial relief of a tax stabilization agreement with the Thurber Farm. A contract for the West River Park softball field outfield fence. Discussion of a recreational grant for the West River Park, and proposed to award a contract for a new building at the Pleasant Valley Radio Tower. All that and more coming up. The Brattleboro Select Board is next here on BCTV.
Good evening, and I would like to convene our first regularly scheduled meeting of December 4th. Has the meeting been officially warned?
Yes.
And I would accept a motion for the minutes of our November 20th meeting.
Move to approve the minutes of November 20th.
There you go. Any additions, corrections, deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none? Abstain? One abstention? That's correct. Thank you. Chair's remarks, briefly. The two big campaigns, Project Feed the Thousands and the Christmas Stocking campaign, and there are numerous other, the Heat Fund campaign, just this time of year. Numerous charitable organizations looking for funding, so if you can find it, find some spare change around, please make a contribution. They're all worthwhile organizations. I'd also like to thank the group of people, I think with the BAB organization, who decorated downtown. They put lights on the side of the Brooks House, which actually looks quite nice. Wonder why we haven't done that years and years and years ago. So thank you to all the people that volunteered for that. Other than that, that's about all I have here this evening. Barb, do you have anything?
Just really briefly, December 14th, it'll be the annual employee breakfast and Feed the Thousand campaign. So that's Friday, December 14th.
There you go. Okay. Select Board Committee reports.
Traffic Safety Committee met last Tuesday. We continued our discussions of safety on William Street. What's the name of the development there?
Oh, the Whetstone?
Near the Whetstone development
Whetstone
up on the hill there. There was some concerns expressed again about traffic safety up on Putney Road, and we're making progress towards development of traffic calming procedures. What's Hannah's last name?
O'Connor.
Hannah O'Connor,
O'Connell.
the new, is that?
O'Connell, I'm sorry.
Hannah O'Connell, the new second in charge at Department of Public Works, has taken on that project. We're expecting a new draft at the next meeting.
There won't be a meeting of traffic safety in December, but so the next meeting will be in January.
Good. Anyone else? Okay. And I did want to add If you missed the paper, Saturday we do have a budget meeting from 8 to noon time. The board has some heavy lifting to do on Saturday, and as I said in the paper, not that budget meetings are supposed to be fun, but they have become more difficult as I have progressed in my 7 years on the board. So actually not looking forward to that meeting on Saturday. So if you have an opportunity to attend, please stop by and see us. We'll be here from 8 to noon. Public participation, an opportunity for you to speak about something that is not on our agenda here this evening. If you would come up, I'll recognize you after you raise your hand. If you come up to the microphone and state your name and the town that you're from, I'll give you about 2 minutes. Yes.
Hi, I'm Wendy Krieger from Brattleboro. And I'm here basically to talk to you about the skate park concerns I have. The skate park potentially going into Crowlot. And I'm very involved with the Recite people. And, you know, Dick, when you talked at the last select board meeting that I was at, you mentioned about how your flowers were being pulled up. And then I read the article about the lights being destroyed. Well, we're having an issue with signs being lifted. And nobody else's signs are being lifted. The compost signs are there, the other political signs, the Vermont Yankee signs, all those signs are there, but the Recite signs come up. Not even the old the old signs that had to do with the, reciting the park. Those aren't being removed, just the Recite. So on November 15th, we figured out there were anywhere from 11 to 15 signs that were pulled up from the neighborhood. And I contacted the police. And then on 11/15, I went to a basic meeting to ask them a couple things and also to reach out to them. I said to them I was asking for some help, that maybe they could put word out to the skateboarding community to ask them to please leave the signs alone. And when I said that, they all looked at me like I had a crown on my head. It was unbelievable. Well, anyway, on 11/20, a whole bunch of signs on Western Ave were all tossed or knocked over. And then on 11/21, which was the day of Thanksgiving, I get an email from the Brattleboro Police Department saying they found 14 signs. So one of the police officers was nice enough to drop the signs off at my house. And then on 11/23, I found a Facebook post that was on Friends of the Skate Park. And it was posted by a person named Scott Board Dixon, who I found out is actually Scott Dixon from Hinsdale. And when the signs were returned, the email said it was from somebody from Hinsdale. And he basically said that somebody left a bunch of Recite signs at his half-pipe party. And his half-pipe is actually inside his house. So if he had a party and somebody dropped off 14 or 15 signs, I would assume he would know who did it. So obviously they were stolen. He also stated that he kept one, but he did state that he returned them to the Brattleboro Police Station. So I wanted to just give the select board some information on this, that I've reached out to the basic committee. Maybe you guys can reach out and please tell them to put the word out, to please stop taking our signs. And then the thing that I wonder about this whole process is, at this party, were there any of the basic board members there? And that's one question I have. So thank you.
Well, I don't know, and that's their prerogative if they do want to go to any kind of party that they want. We don't put restrictions on those people. I would like to say to you, Wendy, as I talked to you briefly before, I can tell you that I have an appreciation for your passion. I may not agree with you, but you are always respectful when you come to speak before the board. You're very composed. I remember the first time you spoke and said how nervous you were, so you really gained in public confidence. So I do appreciate what you do. It does, and I'm supportive of your passion.
Thank you.
So thank you for keep coming. Dora?
Well, I just want to comment. I think the question is, if there were committee members at this party, knowing that taking signs is basically a theft. And the committee members knew that there was the signs. Did they know it? And why didn't they return them? Is I think the question that's coming from Wendy. So, I think it's a larger question.
We just went from a question to pure speculation, and we're kind of crossing the line right now into, characterizing people on a town committee that we don't actually know were at the party. So I don't think the question actually, I found the question to be slightly more rhetorical than that, but I appreciate it being asked. So I would ask that we not go too far with this at a select board meeting unless we're prepared to do some sort of investigation, because just posing the questions like this is really damaging to people's reputations when we obviously don't have the answers right now.
Well, it's a question I'm asking.
And my hope is that you will then do an investigation to find out what the truth is.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Andy Davis, District 3. I'm back here again on the skate park issue, so I hope you'll bear with me. I'm holding in my hands here a Brattleboro skate park fact sheet that's being distributed by the committee, and I think this kind of goes to, I don't want to get into inference, I'm actually talking about something in black and white here, but I think it does go to the process of the role of this committee and the way the committee has been operating. This is called the Brattleboro Skate Park Fact Sheet, and it was distributed publicly by a member of the committee. And I think it's a mischaracterization of what's going on. I think it's spinning things that took place to make them sound like more approval took place. I'll give you an example here. It's characterizing the discussion at representative town meeting as an extensive town-wide discussion of placing the skate park at the Kroll lot. I went on Brattleboro Community TV. I reviewed that discussion. I was at that discussion. To say that representative town meeting was an extensive discussion described as one of the largest citizen participation ever, I won't criticize the grammar, described as one of the largest citizen participation ever at a town meeting relating to issues at the Kroll lot is not true. There was about the majority of the discussion that took place at that meeting was by people who were there, officials who were there promoting the decision, their desire to put a skate park there. And the public had about 4 minutes of comments at the most before the question was called, because it was at the end of a day of about 5 hours of discussing solid waste, which I think you're going to continue that discussion tonight. But I think it's a mischaracterization, and a member of our group was at a basic meeting and asked if this document was approved by the committee, and it wasn't even approved by the members of the committee. It's just being put out in the public as, I think, a promotional, an advocacy document. But I have a high respect for the way paperwork is produced by this town. I've been to informational meetings where I feel like what's put before the public to make informed decisions is accurate. This is not accurate, and it's being put out on the street, and I think it blurs the distinction between a town committee doing a town project and an advocacy organization. It blurs the line, and I am troubled by it. So thank you.
How did you get that, Andy?
Pardon me?
How did you get that?
It was handed to me by a member of our group who received it from a member of the committee.
I was just wondering, because it's publicly distributed, and I was just wondering how it's being distributed. Okay.
I got a copy from a member of our group who was handed it publicly.
In a public place they were handed it, or were they being distributed? That's what my question is.
On High Street. And he walked up to me. I was talking to the neighbor.
So
But you said it didn't come from the committee?
He was walking around the neighborhood
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure, I'm trying,
This person who is on the skateboard committee was walking around the neighborhood that surrounds Crow Lot, and he ran into me. I was talking to a neighbor, and he handed both of us this information. And he was with someone else and said they were going to go, like door to door. And I actually went to the basic meeting on the 15th, and besides talking about the signs, I asked them if this was approved, and they said it was not. And
Right.
I said, then why was this being handed out? And I was going to go to Carol, but then we decided we would bring it up to you guys.
okay.
And I pointed out to them all the facts were all,
Sure. If you,
know.
and just in the future, if you don't mind, you're always welcome to come here and, in the public participation.
yeah,
But if it would be faster for us to get it resolved if you wouldn't mind just letting Carol know too.
absolutely.
Because then we'd be able to do something a little more immediate.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. I would accept a motion to go into liquor commissioners.
Move to convene as liquor commissioners.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0.
All right. There had been an item on the agenda for a second-class liquor license, Michael Guin. That was, he asked that be withdrawn from this meeting, so that's off the agenda. And so now we have a first-class liquor license and outside consumption permit for what will be the new owners of Inspiration Inns, Inc., doing business as 40 Putney Road Bed and Breakfast. And is the representative here? There you are. Okay. Do you want to?
You
Do you
can come
mind
up here,
coming
you can
up
go to
to
that
the
microphone
table,
right
or-
behind you. Either
Yeah.
place is fine with us. Sure.
It wears off.
And basically, if you just want to talk about it's an opportunity for you to tell us a little bit about the liquor, your request for the license, but also to tell us about the new ownership.
Okay. Well, 40 Putney Road has generally not been serving alcohol to the public, but mainly to its own house guests. And one of its features was a weekly beer tasting, which took place. Otherwise, the pub, so-called, is open from 4 to 8, which is when people are signing in or registering and checking into the bed and breakfast. It's not a very wild place, but it does serve a good function for the bed and breakfast. By the way, on your sheet, I notice it says Inspirations IN, and that must mean that whatever you use to type this up has autocorrect. We ran into some problems with it's INN is the actual name, and several critical papers had autocorrect and took one of the N's out.
Oh, yeah.
But the application is for INN.
The memorandum we got from the town clerk has it spelled correctly. It's
And
just the
the,
agenda isn't.
The new owner is a woman who is actually a municipal official in Florida, in Boca Raton, an elected supervisor of the county. So she should be right at home. She'll probably come to all the select board meetings.
Great.
Maybe she'll run.
Pardon?
Maybe she'll run.
Well, it's possible
We'll have
that she will do that.
reopenings.
She has run successfully for office in Florida.
Great.
She's a single woman. She has a daughter who's just graduating from a hospitality school and will be joining her as well. And she started out looking in North Carolina, but the appeal of Brattleboro was just too great, the cultural advantages, and so she decided that she wanted to come to Brattleboro. That was after she had come up to our office to meet with us a few times.
Great.
And I can say that we didn't twist her arm a little bit, help her to see all the advantages of being in Brattleboro, Vermont.
Well, we appreciate that, that's for sure. Well, I would accept a motion.
I will move that we approve first-class liquor license for Inspiration Inns, Inc., doing business as 40 Putney Road, Bed and Breakfast, which is located at 192 Putney Road.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
I'll accept a motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners.
Move to adjourn as liquor commissioners.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
Okay.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business. The last meeting, the board took up discussion of a hazard mitigation grant application. The board has been asked to accept and appropriate the grant that would fund a buyout at 805 Western Avenue. The motion before the board is to accept and appropriate the amount from the hazard mitigation grant of $240,781 and the secondary matching grant from the state CDBG disaster recovery for $78,687. That's the state has approved utilizing CDBG disaster recovery or Community Development Block Grant disaster recovery funding for the 25% match on these grants. And what would happen if approved, and actually, just so the board knows, this has been approved, but we are awaiting the grant agreement. So when it gets approved here tonight, we still have to get the actual grant agreement, to which then it will be signed, and we would move on from there. And so when it's approved tonight, when the grant is finalized, what would happen is we would essentially purchase the property at 805 Western Avenue. There would be a deed restriction, a restriction placed on the land records, so limiting any future development, actually eliminating the use of any future development on that site. And one thing, and then the house that's and the buildings that sit on that site would be demolished and removed, and part of the funding that would come through would be used to pay for that removal for the demo and the removal, as well as the reseeding of the lot. One of the things that did come up, Patrick Moreland, who's been working on the hazard mitigation grant program, did find out there are possibilities of leasing this land in the future. The restrictions would still hold. The town would never be able to sell the land, but you could lease that property, and it would be. But again, the restrictions that were on the land would have to be maintained. So with that information, as I said, Patrick has been the lead on all the hazard mitigation grants. There were very few. This was the only buyout that we had. So with that, if there are other questions that would come up, we would be able to answer those.
I don't understand, what does it mean, lease the property? If we can't develop it at all, we're talking about leasing the green space to
Just somebody who might want it.
It would be permissible with prior approval from FEMA for the town to lease the property. For example, not that this is an option available to us, but if we wanted to graze some cattle there, that would be consistent with the development restrictions and something we would be permitted to lease.
There's a history of goats next to the property.
We can put sheep there.
You could put sheep there. You could do anything which was consistent with the development restrictions. You could put together a lease.
Thanks.
Sure.
Let me get a motion on the floor so we can have further discussion.
I'll be happy to move that we accept and appropriate a hazard mitigation grant from Vermont Emergency Management for $240,781 and to accept and appropriate a secondary matching grant from CDBG Disaster Recovery for $78,687.
Discussion. Dora?
I just want to say that this is exactly what this program is for. It's about taking property out of harm's way and adding capacity for future floods. I've been in favor of this from the beginning. And I just want to say that these folks, in spite of the fact that their house has been destroyed by the flood, after the fire, the Diamond Stones during the fire, they took them in on their porch, were offering up their camper for them to stay in overnight, and it's just an example of the kind of the kind of community we have here in Brattleboro. That no matter how hard people have it, they're always reaching out to help out other people. And I had a very nice conversation with them that night during the fire.
Further discussion? Seeing none, any from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you.
New business. Town Clerk Annette Cappy is here to request that the board approve the resolution that would adopt the the boundaries for the district, certify the number of voters in each district, and outline the number of town meeting members per district. With that, I'll ask Annette to come up and give us a little bit of the history on this and why we're doing it now.
Okay. As you were aware, the legislature this spring did the reapportionment for the legislative state districts. And when they did that, they shifted part of Brattleboro's legislative districts around. And in keeping with our representative town meeting districts, the Board of Civil Authority in October did their redistricting for the representative town meeting districts to be in line with the legislative district. So what that does now is change the number of the population from the districts that we had before and the number of registered voters. And the charter states that this body every so many years, and particularly in a year when the district lines are moved and changed, that you need to redesignate the number of town meeting members that each district is allowed to have. So the memo that you have, according to well, and one thing is interesting because the legislative districts are reapportioned by population. Our town meeting member districts are done by registered voters. So while the population of the three districts is the same, the territory is different, the size of the territory is different, and the number of registered voters is different too. So what the new numbers come up to for representative town meeting, it changes the total number of town meeting members from 129 elected members to 138 based on the population of the three districts. And the breakdown of each now would be that District 1 would have 48 members, where it used to have 45. And Districts 2 and 3 would each have 45 members as opposed to the 42 that they did have. And with changing these numbers, the only town meeting member who is affected is Kathy Erfer. There are a couple others who could be affected, but their term is up this year, so they'll need to run again. So Kathy's term, she'll have one more year left. She'll finish it out as a representative in District 3, although she was elected in District 1, because she hasn't moved. Her district has moved.
Kathy's had to switch twice because she moved, when they bought their house, she had to give up her seat in District 3 and run again for District 1, and now she has to go back again. Right.
And the biggest change in the district was the old line used to run north up 91 and then switch over to Upper Dummerston Road. And now what it has done, even though starting from the southern border, it still goes up 91, but Upper Dummerston Road isn't as much the dividing line between 1 and 3 as it used to be. It's shifted west a bit. So now the east side of Orchard Street and East Orchard Street is in District 3, where before it was totally in District 1. And there are some smaller changes down around William Street and Larkin Street. But that's pretty much all there are for changes.
I move to approve the resolution as presented, adopting the district boundaries, certifying the number of voters in each district, and outlining the number of town meeting members per district.
Further discussion? Dora?
I just want to say that, you know, I mean, when I saw the original, when I first saw the plan, it made total sense. You know, what had what was proposed. It does make sense, and you know, it's nice that given some of the issues that happened in other communities where they were doing line changes, it's nice that, you know, we've been, you know, there hasn't been a huge outcry here, and people have been very accommodating.
Right. I think the big thing that Brattleboro appreciates is that they left. We used to be Wyndham 3, now we're Wyndham 2, Wyndham 2-1, 2-2, and 2-3 rather than Wyndham 3. But I think Brattleboro appreciates the fact that they left Brattleboro itself as an intact district. The sub-districts, these 3 sub-districts have changed, but the district itself as being all of Brattleboro as being Wyndham 2. It makes life a lot easier for everybody. And having the town meeting member districts in line with the legislative districts makes a lot of sense too. So I think the legislative redistricting was a real common sense move. I think it went well, and I've not heard any complaints. It does make a lot of sense, and it evened off especially districts 1 and 3, the population between the two. Back when they were done 20 years ago, they were all the same, but things change.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Annette.
Tonight, the board continues hearing updates from the various town committees. And tonight we have the ADA Advisory Committee. We have 2 representatives from that committee here. And with that, I'll turn it over to you folks. Introduce yourselves and tell us what's going on in the ADA Advisory Committee.
I'm Gary Snyder. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Advisory Committee. I'm also on the Board of Directors for VCIL, which is at the Vermont Center for Independent Living. First of all, I'd like to thank the board for inviting us to come to the meeting tonight. I have some messages that I'd like to relay to you. One pertaining to the hearing impaired. They have asked me to have you have an ASL interpreter at all select board meetings. There's been quite a congregation of people that are hearing impaired that do watch this, and they would like an ASL interpreter to be put in place right off. Second of all, we continue to work toward improving the sidewalks. As you know, I've been here several times. You know, I'm like a rugrat. To me, the board is trying to do its best for the disabled community, and I feel that we need town representation at every meeting. You know, we're getting it hit and miss. I realize Barb is busy with town stuff, but if she can't make it, then there should be somebody from the town representing the town at all these meetings. And there's things that are brought up at the meetings where we want advisory on town issues, but we can't because there's no town representation. And for us to be able to do that would be a great thing for the disabled community. we're working with the CRT, Transportation, Mary Habig. She's trying to make things more pliable for people with disabilities. I need more help with, getting things done. The sidewalks need an extremely amount of work. I go out quite a bit and I look and, I've requested some stuff to be done, which has been done, and I thank you for that. But there's still a lot of work left to do, especially up by the library. That sidewalk, as you're walking toward the American Legion, is terrible. The sidewalk up on Canal Street by the Shell Station and Millennium Pizza, that's in terrible shape. There are sidewalks around here that I hope the town will be able to get fixed up. It makes it a lot easier for people who are disabled, not only people in wheelchairs, but also people that are visually impaired. I find that the visually impaired have quite a bit of trouble maneuvering on the sidewalks because of the large potholes, the cement's broken away, and it has to be. It can't go on. It's got to be fixed, and so therefore, we are working with you people. That's what it's all about. We're all here to help one another and make this town more safe. Another question is the there's no stop, turn on red sign down by the co-op when the crosswalk lights are coming up. That is a big issue. My wife has almost gotten hit there. I've had some problems, people zooming in and out of the parking lot. And that's an issue that's really going to, have to be looked at, because if somebody gets hit and killed, there was a man up in Montpelier, Burlington, that got hit in a crosswalk. And the driver claimed, I didn't see him. Well, I'm asking everybody in the public to please be aware of people in wheelchairs or people with walkers or the visually impaired or the hearing impaired, to be on the lookout. You may not think somebody has a disability, but please take the time to be careful around somebody that's in a crosswalk or somebody walking on the side of the road or on the sidewalk or whatever. I get a lot of help. I'm working with People's United Bank right now in putting an outside automatic door opener in. They've put a request in to have that done. I've also done a lot of stuff around town. I think Barb got an email about what I've accomplished this year alone, and I'd like to keep that momentum going. When I can talk to the state of New Hampshire and have them do some work on the bridges over there to make it more accessible for people in wheelchairs or people walking in general, and have the state of New Hampshire listen to me, then, I feel that as a ADA advisory board member, that I'm doing what I have to do. And what I'd like to do is eventually have this all set up where everybody's going to be safe. And that's our main goal, is to help the disabled. Next Wednesday, I have a meeting between the VCIL and the Independent Living Council, State Independent Silk, in down by the Marlboro College. So that's open to the public. So we hope people show up who are disabled and give us give us some ideas. And there again, I'd like to thank you for inviting us to this committee member.
Thank you, Gary. Barb wants to...
Just to add a couple of things, Rick Ether had been the person who would go to most of the meetings, and so we're getting Hannah there this month, I guess.
Yay, Hannah.
And so, so I'll continue to go as well when I can make it. The other things that the committees, we talked about at the last meeting, I think the committee, which will probably come back to this board, is at this point, there's not a set membership number of people and stuff, and as well as kind of some of the bylaws. And so we're going to be, I think the committee's going to start working on those as well. And so those will come back to the to this board. And because there are some openings, and it is a good committee to serve on. One of the other things that I'm involved with the committee on is just our ADA plan and a review of we have not reviewed that plan probably in 20 years. I think it's old and it needs to be updated and reviewed, and so we'll be working on that. The issue with that is it has to be kind of coordinated between both can't be done just by staff and it can't be done just by the committee. It needs to be kind of coordinated. And so that I need to get a plan to that committee on how that's gonna operate as well.
Dora?
Thanks, Gary. Just if you could kind of follow up what Barb was just saying. One of the reasons why we're doing these committee reports is to kind of have the board become familiar with the committees. So if you could just quick rundown. What the membership is, when the meetings are, what happens typically at your meetings, just so the public and the board can know that.
Okay. Well, we basically, I do more talking than anybody, but basically we discuss, how do we get the sidewalks improved? We're talking about traffic issues with, people while they're in the crosswalk, transportation, things like this. And we're hoping to get more, public participation, because not everybody knows about us. And we want to make it perfectly clear. We're here to help disabled people. That's what we're all about. And, it's an ongoing issue. I mean, either one of you people could be walking down the street and, get hit by a car and boom, you're disabled. So it can happen. And it does happen. So, therefore, we got to work together, and that's what we're trying to do. And I'm hoping that we'll get some more, participation.
Thank you, Gary. In your meetings, the ADA meetings are the second Friday of every month. And normally they are at 10 o'clock?
10 o'clock in the morning.
10 o'clock in the morning, and they're usually here.
No.
No, they're usually in the Marlboro College building.
Oh, Marlboro College
in
building,
the
excuse me.
VCIL office.
Okay.
Suite 211 on the second floor. It's all perfectly handicap accessible. And we'd like to, the disabled community to come and listen to us and participate.
Very good.
I would note that as part of the budget discussions a line item's been added, funding's been added for the ASL interpreter.
Yeah.
So that's being planned for as part of our budget discussions for next year.
Yeah, well, that's great, but I have people that want an interpreter right now because they want to watch, they're interested, they want to express their views, and there's a need for an ASL interpreter right now. Is there any way that you could have this set up for the next meeting?
I would not go out and speculate to say, yes, this is a funding issue for the town. That's one of the reasons it's been put in for next year's budget. There's a fairly good sum of money. Barb?
If we have a specific request on that, and that's why I was talking with Missy on, if there's a specific request for the assistance in that, we will try to find a way to meet that request. Yes.
You know, there's a formal request, right? You know, as of right now.
From you?
From
Because that's one of the things I
talked to Missy
about
today,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and she wanted me to bring this up.
Missy Bouthrow's on the committee. She's also hearing impaired and utilizes an ASL interpreter. And so I had talked with her. Yeah. So I'll follow up with her if there's a specific request for that. We will follow up with that.
Yeah, because she told me to, ask about it tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just a question here. How many people are there? What is the size of the population of people hearing impaired in our community?
I can't give you those figures right now, but we're all getting older, and there's a lot of people. I don't know if you've noticed, but there are a lot of people around town in wheelchairs and whatnot, and I can't give you an exact number, but as far as the hearing impaired goes, I can certainly find out.
That would be a really big help.
But
I
can't. I don't have the
community.
figures right now,
Mm-hmm.
but I can get them for you.
Thank you.
Just so people understand a little bit more, one of the things we talk about it being expensive, it would be great if we could find someone locally who could do it at a reduced rate. But the issue that we have is because of the length of our meetings, you always need 2 interpreters. And what we've found is that a lot of our interpreters are driving, and you get transportation. So typically, what we use as a number is about $500 a meeting, and that's just a fact. It's not a pro or a con. It's just part of what we're struggling with this, which is why putting it in the budget specifically is important for next year, and that's not to minimize the requests that we have today. And it's also an opportunity for me to see if there are people in the community who are able to do ASL interpreting and would be willing to do it as Dora said, reaching out to the community. That would be great, and they could contact the town manager's office. We have talked, so the board knows, we have talked with BCTV about doing closed captioning. A couple things. One is that's actually an expense, pretty good expense that they're not able to do right now. And we had looked at, well, would it be cheaper for the town to do that, invest in that kind of, one chunk. It's a bit of money. The other issue that we have with it is it's really, it's not as useful to the hearing impaired population because it is if your reading skills aren't as good as others, then you might not. The closed captioning doesn't work as well, and ASL signing is much more emotion, and it's not just your hands that you're using your face, and so there's much more meaning conveyed through ASL, which is why we're looking at that.
There's also a time lag with the closed captioning when you're doing a live meeting, which doesn't help people if they're trying to follow the meeting live.
Now, has anybody asked Yasteen School if they could possibly have an interpreter come?
Yes. Oh, some time ago, yes. They didn't have that, but I can deal with that. We'll talk with that.
Okay.
I don't want to put anybody on the spot.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. All set? Very good.
Thank you.
Next up, town meeting.
I'm sorry. Town meeting article. Paul Cameron is here to request that the board place on the 2013 representative town meeting warning an article seeking to raise and appropriate a sum not to exceed $10,000 to assist with Brattleboro climate protection. Paul, talk a little bit about your request.
So Brattleboro Climate Protection asks the Select Board to continue its 9-year practice of placing our annual funding request on the March representative town meeting warning. We understand the town's budget challenges this coming fiscal year, and that's why we want to keep helping town government, local taxpayers, and businesses save energy and money. In the coming year, BCP will continue collaborating with the Public Works Department, Green Mountain Power, and the Brattleboro Energy Committee to determine how many town streetlights could be turned off or converted to high-efficiency LED fixtures to further reduce the town's electric costs. BCPC's push for LED light fixtures is just part of its work with Efficiency Vermont and its Energy Leadership Challenge to help the town reduce its electric usage by 7.5% by July 1st, 2013. As part of the challenge, BCP is identifying further opportunities to save energy and money in town buildings. In addition, BCP is continuing its ongoing free public efficiency and renewable energy workshops, organizing Brattleboro's participation in the 2013 Vermont Home Energy Challenge, which is a year-long effort to increase the energy efficiency of homes and apartments in the state. We're coordinating the Business Transportation Roundtable, made up of representatives from the community's largest businesses and transportation providers to promote travel alternatives through programs such as the Way to Go Commuter Challenge and Go Vermont. And we're encouraging commercial solar electric projects that could potentially sell power to the town with the help of the Brattleboro Energy Committee. And we'll be talking about that later in the agenda. So thank you for your consideration of our request.
As I stated in the administrative report, there are 2 ways a request can make its way to the town meeting warning, representative town meeting warning. And one is for the select board to place the item on the warning, and the second is for the applicant to file a petition with the required number of signatures. This request has historically been placed directly on the agenda because of the assistance provided to the town. But because it's not what has happened in the past, doesn't tie the hands of this board, we are coming forward early so that if you would like climate protection to do a petition, Paul would have time to get the required signatures.
I move to place an article on the 2013 representative town meeting warning asking whether the town will raise and appropriate a sum not to exceed $10,000 to assist in funding Brattleboro climate protection for fiscal year 2014.
Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, Paul's going to stay up here, I assume, as our liaison to the Energy Committee. Lester Humphreys is coming up to talk about the solar electric project. Folks came before the representatives from the Town Energy Committee came before the board in, when was it, October, I think, to talk about, or in August, I'm sorry, to talk about the concept of contracting with a solar photovoltaic system. This board asked the committee to do a little more research on it, and they are now here to report back on what they found and what their recommendations are.
Thanks, Barb. So as part of our mission to promote the development of renewable energy sources for electricity, the Energy Committee has researched the concept of a solar electric farm that would generate electricity for the town of Brattleboro. The committee has gathered information on other Vermont municipalities that are currently purchasing solar electricity or are considering doing so, such as Heinsberg, Starksboro, Middlebury, and Hartford. And we have visited the 2-megawatt solar farm owned by the town of Greenfield, Mass. The committee has also met with 3 local solar installers that are interested in developing a project that would sell electricity to the town. Based on our research, the committee makes the following recommendations. 1, that the town issue a request for proposal for a solar electric project with the assistance of the Energy Committee. The RFP would specify that the town would purchase electricity from the project at a fixed rate, which would be lower than the year-by-year market rate over the project term. The project size would be 500 kW, kilowatts. The length of the term would be set at 20 years. The project contract would include an option for the town to purchase the solar array at fair market value at the end of the 20-year term. And the installer would be responsible for siting and maintaining the project and assuming all costs associated with it over the length of the term. Thanks for your consideration, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Let me get a motion on the floor before we start questioning.
I move to authorize the town manager to work with the Energy Committee on the issuance of a request for a proposal for a solar electric project with the specifications outlined in the memorandum you just read, dated November 14, 2012.
Christopher?
I've got a question, Paul, and do you have a number of parties interested in actually responding to that request?
We've got at least 3 that are very interested. 3
Are they parties you would expect would actually be responding?
Yes, and probably more.
Okay, thank you.
Doesn't
Ken?
dumbest question. Doesn't a request for proposals usually come with a dollar amount attached to it of not to exceed? And would we be specifying that on this RFP?
A dollar amount.
Like a ballpark of what it is that we're looking for, or we're not even...
What the project would cost?
Yeah.
I don't think it has to.
No, doesn't have to, and just because someone submits, we don't have to accept.
No, that I know.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have a great sense of even ballpark what we're talking about here.
I think that what we asked for when the Energy Committee last was before us was some alternate ways that this concept could be structured. And what I understand from what's being presented is that the contract we're asking for would involve the developer siting, building, running the solar farm, and then selling us the power at below market rates. And so I expect that whatever contract we're going to get after the RFP is put out, or proposed contracts we get after the RFP goes out, would involve us looking at the ability of that contractor to follow through, and then how much below market rates they're offering to sell us the power for us. So if we're getting the power cheaper than GMP, I'm not really sure what the downside is on this here. And we've spoken about it outside of meetings, so this is the way we wanted it structured when we spoke with them last time, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea, is that we're saying, you know, we'd like to see how far you can get below what Green Mountain Power would charge. It remains to be seen where they come in at. That's part of the reason for the process. We're hopeful, but we're not there yet. We have to see what they come in at.
Talk a little bit about your visit to Greenfield. Give us a little bit of background as to the conversation you had down there. I think you met with the mayor down there.
We met with the Public Works Director. You want to talk about that?
Sure. It was they're in a little different situation in that it was done on the on the town landfill that they own, which is Brattleboro doesn't own, the landfill. So they own the land, they loan the space, and they put out a request for proposals saying use this space for $1 a year. They weren't asking for a lease cost for the space, and then looking for the lowest price possible per kilowatt hour. Also, based on the going rate, and they got some really nice proposals at that time. And we're in a little different situation in that we don't have the space. But that was a good model to kind of follow up on. They have a 2 megawatt system, and we got a tour of it. It's humming away, creating power for the town of Greenfield.
That's 2 megawatts?
Yeah.
So that'd be 4 times the size of what we're talking about here.
Yes. Now they're bigger than Brattleboro, so they use more than 2 megawatts. This would be about a quarter. Well, the 500 kW would be about a quarter of what Brattleboro uses roughly, and that figure is based on Vermont regulations. There's at up to 500 kW, the power company is required to accept a system, and the permitting system is set up to do that. There still have to be permits to go through and stuff like that as a process. Above 500 kW, the power company can say no, and that's a negotiation with the power company. So this is an easier step, and there's always the possibility of doing another 500 kW at a different location, but we're just one step at a time here.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, did you have your hand up?
Go ahead. Go first.
Thank you. Would there be anything like a certificate of public good or anything like that needed from further up the regulatory food chain?
Yes. There's a process for this size. Below, I believe it's 10 or 15 kW, a small system, there's a very streamlined, it just happens. But a system this size, there's a pretty extensive process that they have to go through.
I see.
Dora?
So following up on what David was saying about sort of what you guys were asked, what you've done is you've come back with what you think, should be the best option. And the sort of step that was in between was what I was asking for was to do the research and kind of bring it back and educate us on all the different ways that this could be done. So just to, and we've had this conversation when I've been talking about this. I'm certainly supporting this. We want to do it before the deduction, the tax deduction goes away. It's being done in other places, but from a longer term thing, you guys are doing a lot of really good work, and you're looking at a lot of different things, but we really need a real comprehensive energy plan, because we keep doing all this stuff piecemeal. It's sort of like it's energy efficiency here, and it's this, and it's that, and it's, for sort of thinking about the work of the Energy Committee in the future, I would love to be able to seek out some sort of grant funding to be able to hire a consultant to actually do a comprehensive, plan for the town, at least on the town-owned properties, that's certainly what I would love to see happen. So that we have a real plan, so that when we come with something like this, we can say, I know that from the work that you guys did in the town plan, and from a general, it fits within that work. But the next step for what we really need and the kinds of things that we could do and what we should be doing, whether we should produce energy, what mix we should have of alternative energy kind of things. There's been a lot of projects out there, a lot of people talking about a lot of different things, it'd be nice to have a real comprehensive plan where people can say, this is what we have, this is what our needs are going to be, and these are the options we have for being able to get there.
I think at least some of that is in the energy chapter of the town plan.
Yeah,
and I would refer you to that. We spent a year and a half working on that chapter. Got a lot of input from community members and energy experts in Brattleboro, and I think it does lay out a good plan for where we want to go in the next 10 years or so.
The other thing I'd like to say is that we've been focusing on the places, the overlap between saving energy and saving money, and feeling like that's the first place to go. And those are the kind of projects that we've been focusing on. There's lots of other areas to go. They cost money. It would be nice to go in those areas, but we feel like by focusing on the initial areas that save money and energy, that's the first place to go. We're definitely open to other ideas, and where's the funding, where's the grant funding, where does that all come from? We've had a lot of suggestions about the way they do things in Europe. Europe is a different place.
It is.
There's a very different tax structure there. The cost of energy is much higher, and it's stays high because of government regulations and rules. And there's lots of programs to make things happen. That's not something that we can jump into without in the United States with the economic realities here. I'm with you. I'm just, we're focusing on what we can do and what we can feel like we can accomplish and save money.
Thank you, Lester.
I move to authorize the town manager to work with the Energy Committee on issuance of a request for proposal for a solar electric project with the specifications outlined in the memorandum dated November 14. Was that read already?
I already did that.
Yeah, we did it. There
But you
go.
did a great job.
He seconds it.
Okay.
I'm ready to vote.
Not purpose.
I kind of got that feeling.
Ready to vote.
All right, and it's still early. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Thank you, and thank you for your work on this. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Yeah. We're very excited to hear the next step.
Yeah, we are too.
Next
up.
thing, next up on the agenda, as the board will recall, we extended our contract with Triple T for providing and pickup disposal services of our recycling and our trash, and we added a curbside composting element. There was a pilot program was developed. Triple T hired Moss Kaler to serve as a compost coordinator. Moss developed the program working with the town and with Triple T. The pilot project is kind of coming to its end, and what we're here to talk about tonight is a proposal to continue the curbside compost on a town-wide voluntary basis. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Moss. And actually, and Norm's with you too, if you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, thank you. And I did want to say that also joining me are Peter Gaskell and Norm Mallory. Norm, the owner of Triple T. In the audience, Bob Spencer, Director of Wyndham Solid Waste Management District, where the pilot compost was taken to be managed and manipulated and turned into compost, as well as a couple of the compost participants are in the audience.
Bob, if you want to, we can move a seat up. Our seats are movable, and that.
Bring one with you.
Yeah. You're only borrowing it, though? You can't take it home with you?
Outside.
I would like to very briefly give a synopsis of the pilot. We started organizing in May, and the pilot actually started picking up compost from 152 participants in the middle of August. The last pickup of the pilot is going to be December 21st, so just a couple more yet to go. And then we're, at least for a temporary time, I hope, going to pull the plug on the curbside compost. And after our presentation tonight, we hope that the board gives its blessing on taking the program town-wide. I mentioned we had 152 participants. 100 of those approximately were already composters, either in their backyard or with Project Cow, and 42 of them had never composted before. So we actually got a pretty good number of people who had not been composters and were willing to participate. We also had a waiting list of about 40 people who were ready to jump into the pilot. They, in fact, a few of them nearly begging me to get in. But we did want to draw the line at 150 or so. Nobody dropped out, not a single person dropped out of the pilot. And in the survey, which we're still waiting for a few responses back, but I've gotten about 134 responses back from our end of pilot survey, and I expect we'll get the last few in the coming week. Every single person indicates that they would like to continue with the curbside pilot and composting. They may continue to compost some in their backyard, but as we explained before, there's a number of items that we pick up curbside that do not go into a backyard compost, such as paper plates, cups, napkins, meat and fish and poultry, cooked or raw, bones, small cardboard boxes like you might get clementines in, kitty litter, and a number of other items. So there's a lot of things that can be picked up curbside that cannot go into your backyard compost. I was also heartened to see that of the respondents to the survey, 46 said that they would volunteer in some way, shape, or form if the program goes town-wide to be, I guess you could call them curbside compost ambassadors, to help their neighbors learn the ins and outs of curbside compost, which frankly is not too difficult, as some of you know. And another 66, I think, maybe not knowing what the time commitment might be on being a volunteer or a compost ambassador, said that perhaps they would volunteer. So that was over 100, that was 110 people of the pilot who indicated that they would or may help see this program become successful town-wide. We did weigh the compost we collected every week, and it averaged out per household around 10 to 12 pounds, which is about what we expected. It could vary a lot from one house to another because one household might have one individual living in it, another might have 4 or 5 or more. One person might have a cat and put their kitty litter in their curbside compost, which is very heavy. So one person might be putting out 20 pounds a week, and another one might be putting out 5 pounds a week. But in either case, it's weight that is diverted from the landfill, where we have to pay to truck it up to Moortown, Vermont, and bury it in the ground where it there takes up landfill space and also contributes to the production of methane gas, which is a greenhouse gas. So that's it in just a nutshell. There's a lot more detail that I'd be happy to talk about if you wish to, but I know that your agenda is always full, and I don't want to take up any more time than necessary.
Peter?
It was a really successful pilot. It was kind of something to look forward to every Friday. We did it on Friday mornings for folks to collect. We did some experimenting with different types of equipment to see if we could combine it with the recycling truck, so we'd be able to pick up folks' recyclables and the compost in one pass, and indeed that would be the case. It would require us to do some retrofitting to equipment that does the space for stopping the program and then starting it again, because we need to send the trucks out of town to have that accomplished. And then it also, the program, if we do go forward, would allow folks to have the recycling picked up on a weekly basis versus the infamous every other week, is it my week or not? That would go away, and folks would have the recyclables collected weekly, which we anticipate folks would see a bump in collection rates. Lots of folks, when they fill up, they stop. And so hopefully that would see some more recovery on that side of the coin as well. I would like to point out that with the weekly pickup that Peter's speaking of, joining in on the curbside compost would be voluntary, as opposed to the Brattleboro's recycling ordinance, which is mandatory. Everybody should be and is required by ordinance to recycle. They would not be required by ordinance to separate out their compost. though in a number of years, because of the Vermont legislature passing H-148, that will be changing in the future. So a number of years from now, it will be a requirement, not just the town of Vermont, just the town of Brattleboro, but all of Vermont, all residents will have to be separating organics from their waste stream, but that's a few years away. But whether people, if we go townwide with this, whether or not you are a participant in the curbside compost, your recycling will still be picked up every single week. So as Peter was saying, you won't have to worry about, well, is this my Wednesday or is it next week? Every week, recycling will be picked up as well as compost.
Norm?
Don't have much to say.
And Bill, would you like to
That's what we
comment?
like.
Yeah, as from the solid waste district's point of view, the quality of the material separated was as good as it gets, and I've been involved with many municipal composting programs in my career, and that really has to do with the good communication that Moss and Peter orchestrated. And we provided feedback when the load would come in, because I would inspect the load and see what was in it and mix the mixes. And we're composting it at the landfill on Old Ferry Road. So it was a very successful program as far as the quality, because you've got to sell a product. You don't want to have glass and plastic and metal. So I think the people that were participants are thinking they want to have some compost too. So we're going to make that available to the participants this spring. Also, I'd like to say that as we move forward, the district has to look very carefully at what this means, because the district, like most municipal governments are now, is looking at tighter budgets. There is an added cost. There's more labor. We would have to make an investment in some equipment and perhaps structures. But I think if we continue on this sort of gradual startup and grow the program, we can evolve with it. If we were to have a permanent program that we would plan on year after year with Brattleboro, we would probably want some type of contractual commitment that the organics would come to us so that we could make that investment in the buildings and infrastructure. Basically looking at putting a building up and with odor control and some processing equipment so that it doesn't cause any nuisance conditions. But I must say this is the leading program in the state of Vermont and probably in all of New England now for a curbside residential organics program. There's a lot of people looking at this program. Moss and Peter have been invited to speak at the annual Composting Association of Vermont's meeting at the end of March to present the program. And the district will continue to support the town.
Thank you, Bob. Barb?
Couple things. One is what we had talked about in my discussions with Moss and Peter. As the board's aware, we have a contract in place for the pickup already with Triple T, so that doesn't change. Nothing would change with regard to our budget this year or in future years. Added costs that would be required to go to a voluntary townwide project would be we would continue to need someone, some type of coordinator to assist with the development of the townwide project and to assist with the educational component. Again, I don't think it would be something that you would need for the life of that project by any means. But I think it is something, I think part of what made this a success was having that coordinator. And one of the things that Moss did, answered questions, sent out weekly emails, those types of things that I think helped make it successful. Reminded everybody, the only drawback of the commercial compost was you have to take the little plastic things out of some of the, like your broth boxes. Yes. It takes waxed boxes, so that was my only complaint. But anyway, so that would, I think that would be a cost for the beginning. I think there would also be a cost for compost bins that we would need. Now, what we had talked about was the possibility of, unlike the recycle bins, cost sharing the bin cost, or sharing the cost with the participants, maybe at either a set dollar amount per bin or at a 50-50 split, so that there is some ownership of the bin and a little more maintenance, and because the bins actually do need to be maintained, they need to be washed out periodically, those kinds of things. But the actual quality of there were a variety of bins that were used during the pilot project, and I think overall that was part of the data that was collected at the end, was what were some of the better bins and that type of thing. So I think we've got that information. Looking at this financially is, I believe that we have some money within the current year budget because we have continued to decrease the amount of trash that we're dumping, and increase the recycling. And even with 150, I'm sure there was an impact on the compost, along with the Project Cow that was open. That's back to being open twice a week. And so there is a savings that I'm projecting in our tipping fees this current year of approximately, I'm thinking about 25,000 is what it looks like at this point. And I would like to propose that that with the consensus of the board, that we move forward with developing kind of the financial plan for trying to start this fiscal year. We had talked about March.
Right.
We had kind of talked about March, April, and incurring some of those costs now, and then what I'm looking at with the next year's budget, the only tweak we'd have to do with the FY14 budget is, I believe that the tipping fees you do pay a tipping fee for compost, just like you pay a tipping fee for recycle, but it's half of the cost of the trash. So the one thing that's good about compost is people who start curbside composting, it really is a pretty good indication that weight is coming out of the trash and into the compost. So you should expect to see, and you do see a savings in your tipping fees, because you're paying half the cost to tip what tends to be a heavier product. Coffee grounds are heavy. Anything that's kind of has some moisture in it is heavier. Kitty litter is picked up, those kinds of things. So we would need to do just a rerun of our numbers for FY14. But I think what's been presented tonight, and as a result of the pilot project, is just a real opportunity for the town of Brattleboro, both to really in a positive way attack a kind of a portion of our budget that feels somewhat out of our control, and also to do to do something that's innovative, that's not being done in other places, and that best prepares us for when House Bill 148,
It's
Act 148 starts. So what I wanted to do tonight was ensure that there was a consensus from the board on this, if there were suggestions that you would have with regard to, the bins, whether agreement or disagreement about how we maybe purchase those, any discussion that you might have about the coordinator position, some of those things, and we can come back then. And I would like to come back on Saturday, actually, if possible, with a kind of a firmed up monetary proposal.
Well, I think that not having any answers to several of the questions that you have proposed, I would certainly like to see something, if not on Saturday, make this an agenda item for the 18th of December. Saturday we have a pretty full plate, and I don't want to get distracted by Although I believe this is important, we can put this off for 2 weeks and have it as an agenda item on the 18th. And then you can get all the information that we need here in terms of, this is pretty early in the year, to look at taking money out for something where we believe we might have significant savings, but I'm certainly comfortable with entertaining the proposal. It's best that we have things in front of us and not make a snap decision. So
No, I'm not asking for that. I'm
And
just,
Saturday is the issue for Saturday is the budget.
Well, I mean, I'm totally in favor of proceeding, and the only question I have is whether we're going to be able to do it within the budget that we're already contemplating. If the tipping fee is going to be half for compost as opposed to trash, we could realize savings enough to pay for the coordinator and help to pay for the bins. And that's really the question. I expect that's what you were talking about, Barb, trying to run those numbers for Saturday's budget discussion. And if you have numbers for us that we can rely on, I'm certainly happy to look at them on Saturday.
Well, the issue isn't for Saturday, it's for this year's budget. So this is for starting the program in March of this year.
Right, but I understood Barb was saying that she might have numbers for next year's budget as well.
Right. If we did it, we'd be looking at that too. So I could put it all together and the board can decide what it would like to look at.
That'll work. Dora?
I just want to say that Bob can speak to this more, but it's certainly been discussed at the solid waste district about what kind of help, because the solid waste district, one of its functions is to do education around dealing with solid waste and recycling and all that, and we do have a person who is doing it, and we have gotten some funding from the USDA, and we have put some money in our budget for that, and so there is a possibility that some of it could be done by the solid waste district, and then we might need, so there is some possibility of sharing sort of education duties related to it.
If I might just comment on that, we absolutely believe you need some sort of educational component, particularly as you bring on, new people. My experience in the town of Vernon, where we started a Project Cow Dumpster 3 years ago, is that, and you've had this experience at Fairgrounds Road, you basically train the users and they get very good at separating, and we don't have to police it. We don't even lock it all the time when it's not in use. So. But the education, we have security cameras on my phone. But the education is really important because the goal is to make a usable product. If it gets abused and poor quality materials put in there, it just becomes a liability, frankly. So I would offer our support to this program. We already are supporting it. Our board actually is very interested in expanding, and I'm picking up on Dora's comprehensive energy plan idea of looking at perhaps generating methane and biogas from food waste eventually that could be used right at the carbon harvest facility. So there is a real potential to grow an organics to energy facility, and this would be very compatible with it.
Thank you. Christopher?
I would just like to say that as someone who, one of those 150 people who participated, that it was a very interesting experience. It was a learning curve, but it wasn't very steep. Those materials that Moss put together, that posters saying this is what you should, this is what you should not compost, were extremely helpful. There were opportunities to ask questions about, what about this, what about that? And I too felt that the educational piece was integral to the success. And I think there was a big success. It was so easy to do. I mean, it's an idea whose time has not just come, but it's been with us for a long time. And to see this effort go on and go forward, very well organized, was really wonderful to see.
Ross?
I'd just like to add two quick things about people who might be watching or what might be covered in the media. We did a survey going into the pilot as well, before the pilot started, and 51 people thought that it might be a problem to store the compost for a week along with their trash, along with their recycling. And in the survey we just got back, only 2 people out of 134 said it after they'd experienced for about 16 weeks. Only 2 people said it was a problem, and 6 said occasionally, probably after they had a house full of people or something like that. So 51 thought it might be a problem, and only 8 either occasionally had a problem. And another thing people might think about in terms of separating compost is the odor issue. And once again, in the survey that we've just gotten back, I don't think anybody cited, not a single person cited that as a major problem. Most people said it wasn't a problem at all. And a handful of people said the odor was occasionally a problem. And keep in mind that all these things that you're putting into your compost to take out to the curb are, if you aren't composting, are going into your trash anyway. So, I mean, they're there in your house collecting over the period of a week. So if you have odor issues with your trash or with your compost, it'd be no more than you would have them with your trash.
Thank you. Dora?
Well, just to follow up on this, I mean, I didn't participate in the compost program because I was going to move, and I knew that, so I didn't do it. Although I'm excited to get into it now. But I've been doing the Project Cow for a couple of years now, and there's ways of dealing with the smelly stuff. You just stick it in your freezer.
Exactly.
I'd just like to add one more thing about the overall recycling effort in Brattleboro. I'm sure you've gotten feedback, but Brattleboro in 2000 fiscal year 12 recycled 230 tons more than they did in the previous year. And that's not counting the organics. So the educational effort that you had the previous year apparently had good results. And I'm not sure what the recycling rate is in Brattleboro. Is it around 30?
It's around I figured out a week or so into each month. And so I don't have the data to tell you about November's recycling rate because we've just gotten into December. But October was the highest rate that we've ever had in October.
About what?
About 34%.
Yeah, and the state goal is 30%. They're now setting, in fact, we're reviewing the new materials management plan for the state, and they're setting a goal of 50%. Of course, the bar gets raised. But really, the only way to get there is with organics. There's only so much paper and plastic you can recycle, and the tons of paper that people are generating are actually decreasing. So the reduction, the source reduction efforts of industries and consumers are working. In fact, Norm, we were in Vernon last night speaking to the Board of Selectmen about the same issue, and Norm made the point that the total tons of waste nationwide are decreasing. It's economic factors, but also recycling.
Thank you. Howard?
So this is going to stop in December and pick up in March possibly, but so the question I have, I thought that one of the biggest questions was what's going to happen in winter. So how are you guys going to handle, seems odd to stop this just as winter comes on.
Well, we've answered a few of them, although it hasn't been as extreme as one would hope. But I don't think we've really felt any freezing issues and stuff like that. And we've looked towards a couple other programs to see what their experience has been and feel confident.
So you don't think the winter it's going to be an issue though?
Yeah. Because there's quite a number of paper items that can go, they're second grade paper or soiled paper, like paper cups, napkins, pizza tray, sugar and flour bags and such as that. And that you can actually layer in your compost bin. It's quite easy to throw in a bunch of that paper, which is essentially dry, and then you can put your food on top of it, and then another layer of paper is one way that, and if it freezes amongst the paper, that's fine. I think the only issue would be is if it freezes to the inside of the container, but it's not difficult to isolate your food, your wet compost, from the sides of your container. An awful lot of people in the pilot are using compostable bags and then your wet food is within a bag, and so it can't freeze to the inside. I really don't think it'll be much of a problem, and I think each and every participant, if it is a problem, will quickly find a solution.
Plus, I might add, Howard, that most of the programs in North America are in Canada. Toronto, throughout New Brunswick and Vancouver and Guelph. I mean, there's a lot of programs that have been running for over 10, 15 years. So it is a manageable aspect, but there are some challenges, some frozen loads and things like that. But the composting process, just to let you know, proceeds very well even in cold temperatures if it's managed right.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Moss. Thank you, Peter. Norm?
Next is with regard to a farm tax stabilization agreement. In 2006, the town entered into a farm tax stabilization agreement with the Thurber Farm LLC, and Mr. Thurber is here, coming up to the table. At this time, Thurbers are requesting to remove 3 acres from that agreement. The board is asked to approve a partial release of the lien. A tax stabilization agreement kind of creates a lien against a property. And so where the board's asked to release that lien contingent on payment of a penalty. The penalty is basically what would the taxes that would have been on those acres for the past 5 years, and comes to an amount of $310.46 is calculated by the listers and the treasurer's office. And so with that, I would ask Mr. Thurber if he'd like to say anything.
Well, the only thing I'd like to say that some years ago when we sold our development rights, it was agreed among our family to keep out 3 acres for each child. And so this is Eli Gould and Jessica Gould. Jessica's our daughter. And it's time for them to have this piece of property. And that's the only reason that that's the reason we're here. And the trail is right near there, but this will not affect the trail. Talking to Peter just a few minutes ago. That will still provide parking, and there's a right-of-way, and so I think it will go on. And it'll come back to a tax roll for Brattleboro.
There you go.
So, is there any other questions?
It's a beautiful spot.
There's one thing that wasn't in this, and I don't know whether you realize this, but in these tax stabilization agreements, the town has right of first refusal.
Right.
So I think on the 3 acres, and I know you don't have any extra money, but if it was a big piece of farmland that was going in a direction you didn't want it to go in, it's in there. So
I did talk with Bob Fisher about that, if that needed to be in here.
It didn't.
And he said it didn't.
Okay.
So,
fine.
but I thank you, because I did ask that myself.
The property is on the corner of Abbott Road and Ames Hill Road.
Oh, okay.
I move to authorize the town manager to sign a partial release of the tax stabilization agreement between the town and the Thurber Farm LLC upon payment to the town of the differentials in tax plus interest in the amount of $310.46.
Further discussion?
Yep.
Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Sue.
5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry you had to wait so long.
That's okay.
Um,
I like to hear the discussion.
There you go. Well, there'll be some seats up here next year if you want to come. The next up, Carol Lott is here requesting approval of the awarding of a bid for softball field fencing at West Whipple Park.
Hey, as Barb just mentioned, we had a bid opening November 21st to install a backstop and chain link fence around the 300-foot softball field at West River Park, and that includes 8-foot outfield fence. We received 4 bids, one from Wayside Fence for $28,000, of Brattleboro, Monadnock Fence of West Swansea, New Hampshire for $29,953, Springfield Fence from North Springfield, Vermont for $35,185, and Round Hill Fence from Orleans, Vermont for $42,965. And I'd like to recommend that the board award the contract to the local bid, Wayside Fence of Brattleboro for $28,000.
We'll accept the motion.
Move to award a contract in the amount not to exceed $28,000 to Wayside Fencing of Brattleboro, Vermont, for the purpose of installing fencing at the softball field at the West River Park.
Further discussion? And I see, Carol, that you're going to get a grant for almost $15,000 from the state here, and then your other fundraising will take care of the cost for this, so no impact on the taxpayers.
No impact on the taxpayers. This project is 100% fundraised, and is the next item is the grant. So are we just moving right into that?
Not yet. One vote, yeah.
And the other good news there is that it's a Brattleboro company.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
happy to see that. So all those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, as Carol is going to talk about the grant, and also just to let her know that she wanted to come before the board to update you on the project in general, because I had actually told her she wouldn't have to come tonight, but she wanted to come and bring you folks up to speed on how things are going at West River.
So I did want to answer any questions. Now that Phase 1 is now complete, we had our fall program, soccer program take place out there September and October. Certainly the first weekend we learned a lot of our kinks and our traffic flow, but once we worked that out and we decided that we needed to do a little bit of parking lot design with some poles that were donated by Fairpoint Communication. We were able to establish a nice traffic flow pattern within the park. We got a lot of positive feedback. That people really enjoyed having the openness to the river and all, being able to eventually get their kayaks and canoes out there. A lot of great feedback that we've heard. Fundraising efforts have gone. Certainly we're at a point where we're trying to jump over that wall that we hit. We're at a little over $700,000. We're waiting on a couple of big donation requests that are out. One of the ones that we just heard about is certainly the next item on the agenda is the Recreation Facilities Grant, which is helping pay for the fencing. Some things that the committee is working on here down the road is they're hoping to have the lighting go in if monies can be secured for the lighting so that we can have the softball open up this spring with the 3 games a night.
Wow. That's industrial.
That's the industrial, yeah. Wow. So we've had a lot of local support. We've got a lot of great support from local businesses, organizations, and very much appreciate that. We certainly, we're working on grand opening gala in the spring. That will probably happen late April, early May. Softball starts the first week of May, and we're hoping to have our grand opening at that time. So it's a pretty exciting time for the department and for the town in general, having this nice addition to complement our existing facilities.
Any further questions for Carol before I accept the motion for the grant? A motion on the grant.
I move to accept and appropriate a $14,475 recreational facilities grant from the state of Vermont Department of Buildings and General Services, and a $14,475 match to be met from donations to the West River Park to contribute to the development of the West River Park.
No discussion. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for your leadership on this program. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Next, the board is asked to award a contract to United Concrete of Yalesville, Connecticut. This contract would be for a climate-controlled precast building that would replace the 1930 Fire Watch Tower up at Pleasant Valley. That is it's a wooden structure. In this structure houses the radio equipment for the town of Brattleboro Public Works, Fire Department, and Police Department, as well as our local emergency broadcast station, WTSA. Building is not climate controlled currently. We are having trouble with rodents, etc. And we secured funding through the Radiological Emergency Response Program for this. And so this would be the first stage of this project. The project actually is close to $100,000 in total. Once we get, because this is actually just for the building itself, we would be doing the site work out there, the foundation, and then it's really the moving of the equipment and all the electrical work out there where the cost comes into play. And so this is really the first, but getting this contract, they'll then build the building and we'll ship it here. So with that, the amount the amount for the building is $48,627. We did did a request for bids on this. We received 2 bids back, one from Yalesville, Connecticut United Concrete, which is who we were requesting to go with. The other was about $20,000 higher, and it was from a company out of Alabama. This is kind of a specialized field with these precast buildings, so there aren't a lot of companies that are going to bid on this.
I'd like to award a contract to United Concrete of Yalesville, Connecticut, in the amount of $48,627 for climate control precast building. Did somebody read that before me?
Further discussion? What's that, Dave?
He just wondered whether someone had already read them.
No.
Put me down for this one.
I just want to say that I'm glad that the lowest bidder is the most local company, even if it's not a Vermont company, and just thinking about the carbon footprint of something coming from Alabama, or the memo about the one that came later in Florida, the carbon footprint of moving that cement structure would be pretty high, so I'm glad to see it's only going to be an hour and a half.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Meetings?
Thursday, December 6th at 6:30 p.m., the skate park committee will be meeting in the Hannah Cosman meeting room. This Saturday, as Dick mentioned, the 8th at 8 a.m., the select board will be holding a special meeting to talk about the budget. On Monday, the 10th at 5 p.m., the energy committee meeting. The energy committee will be meeting with local legislators in the Marlboro College Graduate Center. That's at 5 p.m. At 6 p.m., the planning commission will be meeting in the select board meeting room. Also at 6 p.m., the West River Park committee will be meeting in the Gibson-Aiken conference room. On Tuesday, the 11th at 4 p.m., the arts committee is meeting. At 4:30 p.m., the finance committee is meeting. At 4:30, the wastewater treatment plant upgrade oversight committee is meeting at the wastewater treatment plant. At 7 p.m., the tree advisory committee is meeting in the Hannah Cosman meeting room. On Thursday, the 13th at 5:30, the select board will be holding a special meeting to talk about the town plan. Is that meeting? I think that's fine.
Yes.
Okay. On Friday the 14th at 10 a.m., the ADA Advisory Committee meets at the Marlboro College Graduate Center. At 6 p.m., the Rec and Parks Board will be having a holiday meeting.
That meeting has been canceled.
They will not be celebrating the holidays. On Monday the 17th at 7 p.m., the Development Review Board meets in the Select Board meeting room. And on Tuesday the 18th, the Select Board will be holding their next regularly scheduled meeting. And I move to adjourn.
And we'll just add to make sure that we had 14th of December at the employees' breakfast.
What time?
We're there at 7 o'clock?
7 to 9.
7 to 9.
So
We're
quarter to
7.
quarter to 7.
Quarter to 7, yeah. we do 7. Yeah.
Well, if you want to come at 6:45.
And we do have a motion on the floor to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Sorry, please vote.
5-0. Thank you. Thank you, press. Thank you, BCTV.
And
two sets of documents for board members to sign.